The latest. Thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you. Oh, Alassane Ouattara is panicking. The man is hiding, not speculating, not guessing. Panicking ever since the ex-president of Burkina Faso, Paul Henri Santiago Damiba, has been arrested and handed over to the Burkinabe authority. He isn't the only one that is panicking. There's panic everywhere in Africa because a lot of leaders are part. According to Professor Franklin, Watara knows it. The first reason he is trembling is simple and devastating. In West African political folklore, Watara has a reputation. A reputation so well known, it has become a proverb. He is the hare that never fails to fall into the soup. Wow! According to Professor, every crisis, every destabilization, every shadow operation in the sub-region, Watara can be. Somehow, his name is always nearby. Not by accident, not by coincidence, but as led by instruction. Instructions from his masters, the French neo-colonial system, to which he is described as an obedient servant. And yet, he boasts, I am the president, you understand? He boasts of having been a governor of the Bank of France. You know how Africans we are when we get the chance to serve. We have some pride in us whenever it happens that way. But here is the brutal truth the speaker reminds us of. The Bank of France is not the Bank of Africans. It is the Bank of the French Republic. Ouattara never exercised Africans' sovereignty there. He represented foreign interests, nothing more.
Let us now examine the reasons why Alassane Ouattara is panicking. The first reason why Alassane Ouattara is trembling is that, in fact, he is known as the hare that never misses in the sauce. In the soup, he is known as the greatest destabilizer in the sub-region. And he always acts on instructions from his masters, the French neo-colonialists, of whom he is an absolute lackey, a slave, since he boasts of having been a governor of the Bank of France, in which, in any case, he never held any sovereign position whatsoever. The Bank of France, as everyone well knows, is the Bank of the French Republic, not the Bank of Africans. Therefore, when Alassane Ouattara learns that Damiba has been arrested, he fears that a new page of his history, as an inveterate neo-colonialist puppet, will be written. That is the first reason, but there is a second reason why he is panicking. It is because the evidence held by Burkinabe judicial authorities and shared with Togolese judicial authorities indicates that the main sources of funding and weapons supplies intended to assassinate the president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré, and restore a neo-colonial regime in Ouagadougou, were all prepared and financed and planned on Burkinabe soil, from Côte d'Ivoire, from Ouattara's territory. Why is Alassane Ouattara panicking? Because he fears yet another major exposure of his villainy, his wickedness, his treachery, his depravity in Ouagadougou. That is the second reason. Alassane Ouattara is involved in every coup attempt, from Paul-Henri Sandaogo to Amoeba up to his neck, nay, even to the very top of his bald head. Ouattara is deeply involved in it, from head to toe, and, as they say in the colorful expression of Ivory in popular slang, Alassane Ouattara is in pain. Pain brew. He is in pain. So, the second reason is that Côte d'Ivoire is the state that played the major role as an active rear base for the destabilization that led to Damiba's arrest. But now, we come to a third reason why Ouattara is panicking. He is panicking because, regarding Henri Sandaogo Damiba, who is now in custody and will therefore undergo judicial proceedings in his home country, Well, Burkina Faso, Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba might decide to talk. The facts have already spoken. The evidence that led to his arrest has already spoken. But Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba could decide to speak even more. Why? He might decide to speak even more, first, because he feels he didn't receive sufficient solidarity from those who sent in, namely Alassane Ouattara and the French neocolonialists. He might feel that the pressure that should have been applied on President Faure Gnassingbé and the Togolese government was not strong enough to prevent the Togolese government from handing him over. He might feel that his masters, the French neocolonialists and their puppets, in ECOWAS have been ungrateful toward him. Because, after all, Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba is a soldier of French neocolonialism and Western imperialism. He is a lackey like Watara, serving foreign interests contrary to Africa's. He might feel that his own camp has abandoned him. And since his own camp has abandoned him, Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba might decide to free himself. He might decide to let his heart speak. Now, if he lets his heart speak, that truths will emerge in the military tribunal of Ouagadougou. If Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba speaks, if he speaks from his heart, if he tells everything, Watara is exposed. And well, completely exposed. If Damiba tells everything, Ouattara's ass is out. So, second reason why Alassane Ouattara fears if Damiba speaks. But Damiba could not only fully and completely implicate Ouattara, but he could also implicate Ouattara's allies, in the sub-region and internationally. Thus, this affair could turn into a scandal. Not just Burkinabe. It could become a West African scandal. It could become an African scandal. And it could escalate into a geopolitical, diplomatic, global scandal. And Alassane Ouattara sees himself swept up in such a spiral, at the risk of even being seen as an amateur and punished by his masters for failing to successfully carry out and complete this operation. Alassane Ouattara fears that Damiba will tell everything, and that people will once again discover that behind the villainy of what was being prepared, there was nothing more or less than his asymmetrical face and his semicolon-like gait. Do you understand this? That's why I urge the authorities of Burkina Faso to guarantee absolutely ironclad security for Damiba. Because Damiba's main enemy, from now on, is Alassane Ouattara. The one who has an interest in killing Damiba right now is Alassane Ouattara. If Alassane Ouattara can get access to Damiba, he will have him killed. Because Alassane Ouattara has no interest in Damiba speaking. Burkina has an interest in Damiba speaking. ECOWAS has an interest in Damiba speaking. The Africa of Freedoms, the Africa fighting for its awakening and sovereignty, has an interest in Damiba telling everything. But those who have no interest in Damiba speaking are Ouattara Draman and the CDAO, the French neocolonialists, and Western imperialists. Thus, Damiba is a lackey. Therefore, consequently, in fact, Damiba's life is first threatened by his own masters, who, at the first opportunity, will gladly shoot him to prevent him from exposing them. Hence my humble first recommendation to the authorities of Burkina Faso. Please, heighten your vigilance. Even though people might think that it is you who could be very angry with Damiba and seek revenge against him, you are now, in fact, the guarantors of his life, because his life right now is Ouattara's #1 target. Watara wants to erase all traces. Watara wants Damiba to remain silent. Consequently, if he has the slightest opening to reach Damiba, he will take it. Do you understand?
So when the news breaks that Damiba has been arrested, Watara does not sleep at all. Hey, Watara hasn't been sleeping for all these days. Tension everywhere. Because he knows what arrests do. They open mouth They unlock memories. They rewrite histories. And he fears that yet another chapter of his long neo-colonial record, described here as hardened, unapologetic, and authoritarian, may now be written in public. But that is only the first reason. The second reason is far more dangerous. Hey, Watara is in trouble. Wahala. Far more lethal. According to information allegedly available to Burkinabe justice and already shared with Togolese authorities, the plot goes deeper, which we know. Even per the confessions of some of the people that they arrested, we know. Much deeper. Funding, weapons, logistics. We heard all from the first 2, 3, 4, 5 confessors. A plan not just to destabilize, but to assassinate. The target? We already know who the target is. The president of Burkina Faso are all in all, the savior, the protector, the unifier, the messiah, the king of kings, the most loved, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. The objective? To overthrow the current order and restore a new colonial regime in Ouagadougou. Period. This is what Watara is doing everything possible to make sure it happens. And where, according to these elements, did this operation originate? Not in the shadows of nowhere. Per the confessors that said it earlier on, they mentioned Ivory, not in some nameless land, but from Watara's Côte d'Ivoire. Prepared there, financed there, projected onto Burkinabe soil from there. That is why Watara panics. From the very day the first confessor began speaking, Watara hasn't known peace. Forget about the way he tries to. There's no peace. Because what he fears is not just justice. He fears exposure. A massive unmasking of what the speaker calls his violence, his cruelty, his perfidy, his political perversity, all laid bare in Ouagadougou. And then comes the most damning accusation of all. According to this narrator, Alassane Ouattara is implicated in every coup attempt linked to Paul Henri Santiago Damiba right up to the coup itself. The man they do things. Completely implicated from head to toe, as the speaker says, vividly, right up to the top of his bald head. No escape, no half measures, no plausible deniability. And in the raw, unforgiving language of Ivorian street slang, the verdict is brutal. Watara is a pain, a permanent problem, a political poison, according to Professor Franklin. And if the truth continues to come out, this story is far from over. Far from over, because it's not only Watara at the moment that is panicking. Even some heads of states in Africa are panicking. There are a lot of people that are linked to this thing that happened in Burkina Faso. A lot of African leaders are part. Because we heard some names, not only Africans. And Damiba will crown it all by telling us the rest of the people that are involved. So the calls that these people are making, and there is nothing that will save them, because Damiba will also make sure he wouldn't be the only person to go down in history as the bad person. Their names will definitely be out, and it is a shame on the part of us all in Africa that we are the same people who are still ready to offer our freedom on a silver platter to these people. What a shame on us. that we claim we want to be separate, yet we prefer to be slaves forever. Oh, this is heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking. But this is also good because this time round, they never succeeded. They always succeed in taking out our heroes, our freedom fighters. But now the table has turned. And we will now get to know, and their names will also go down in history as the leaders who rose up against the freedom of Africa with evidence, videos, voices, messages. We need to write a book, a whole book, and I know our all in all will do that. We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall, and united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world in Africa, West Africa, in Ivory Coast.